Well, I'm sorry to say the Chain of Ponds detour by Viva Energy is still a bit of a debacle. It's improved a little bit, but not much. Now, just to set some context, this section of path here was a detour for a long time by Osgrid, I think, and they were putting up these new shiny poles. And there were detours here for ages, and there were traffic controllers and lots of signage, and it was really well organised. So I guess they set the standard for how things should be. Now we ride along, and yes, there's a little bit more signage has been put up, but it's still not a very good job. However, a traffic management plan was done, it was submitted to council, but let's just go through it and have a look at some of the problems with it. So from the details of the traffic control plan, we can see a plan was put together by professionals from Sydney Traffic Control, and it does say that certified traffic controllers will be on site to implement and monitor this TCP, and that Sydney Traffic Control holds no responsibility for this traffic control plan unless Sydney Traffic Control employees are used to implement and monitor this TCP. Okay, that's all good. There's the details. Now, what if we get into the rest of it? Well, there's a nice map showing where the signage is going to be put up. And the interesting thing, of course, is when this detour was first put in, is a bunch of this signage was actually missing. So I don't know if Sydney Traffic Control weren't brought in to actually implement it, or they ran out of signs, which I know has happened on some detours before. But yeah, there was not the signage that is in this plan was not there on day one. Let's get into the nitpicking detail, and if we look at the southern end of the diagram, we can see that what's supposed to happen is that cyclists come along the Cooks River path, and then they're supposed to be diverted off into Verona Street and then turn left into Palmer Avenue. What's the problem on site? Well, there's actually no signage at that turn off to say you have to turn here. There's pedestrian signage a little bit further on. In fact, there's a sign that points pedestrians over a bridge over the canal, which is all well and good, and points them to cross the grass at Palmer Reserve. But all there is a sign saying no cyclists, and out on the street there's one that says watch for cyclists. There's no signage which is specific for cycling detours, and the signage is now available. It has been adopted at a number of work sites, particularly around West Connects. And there should be signage there for specifically for cyclists. You know, pedestrians and cyclists sometimes have different detours for different reasons, like pedestrians might get put onto the path and cyclists on the road, or you know, there might be stairs, for instance, midway through a detour, so pedestrians can use the stairs but cyclists can't. They get sent on a roundabout route. You can't assume that pedestrians and cyclists are going to use the same pathway. You might have pedestrian signage and cyclist signage pointing in the same direction and both are supposed to use it. Yeah, that's all well and good, but here it's quite clear pedestrians are supposed to go on the path and cyclists on the road. So why is there no cyclist specific signage? And I would have thought where this big red arrow is would be a really good place to have a sign saying cyclists turn right here. And then, you know, you got to make this stuff obvious, because there's actually no map here showing people where to go. The map is beyond the turn-off point, and it's a tiny little thing. It's A4. It's probably going to get soaked when it rains and you won't be able to read it. And cyclists aren't going to know where the hell to go. So when you send them out onto Verona Street, you then need another sign telling them to turn left and go up Palmer Avenue. And unfortunately, almost exactly the same holds true at the northern end. When you're coming from the north, there is absolutely no signage to tell cyclists that you need to divert onto the road, because you've got to remember most cyclists are going to be coming along the path, and when they get to the whatever that T-junction is, they somehow need to get out onto the road there and go follow the road down to Palmer Avenue and turn right. Well, whilst at the corner of Palmer Avenue there is Palmer Avenue and Augusta Street, there's some pedestrian signage. Again, there's nothing there for cyclists. You know, as a cyclist, you can't just assume you're going to follow the same route as pedestrians. And the thing is, the signage is over near the footpath for pedestrians, and it's kind of hidden behind a tree. So if you're out on the road cycling along, and you don't look up at the right moment, there's a good chance you're actually going to miss the sign. So instead of having the signage over where it is, you actually need, for cyclists, it needs to be on the other side of the road, pointing down Palmer Avenue. The other thing is there's absolutely nothing anywhere at either end to tell you that the detour is finished. I mean, that's a normal thing with any diversion, is you have end detour, because this worksite, there is nothing, you know, why assume that the worksite is just this little section and this is the only detour? You know, it does happen that work sites kind of go on a bit, or there's you know what I mean. I mean, we've been driving for long enough. We've seen this stuff before. But yeah, to me, the traffic management plan, I think council really seriously needs to sit down and have a look at this to learn something from it, that this level of signage is really quite inadequate, and the traffic controllers that are preparing this stuff, need to be told to go back and think again. So let's do a walkthrough of it. So you can see there's pedestrian signage, there's footpath closed, there's grass there, so you can't ride across that. You've got to do a U-turn, go back, and there is no signage at this concrete path going off to the left here to tell cyclists this is where they're supposed to go. So this is going to pop us out onto Verona Street, and right where I'm turning there should be signage. And when I come out here, what do? Do I keep going kind of bear right, keep going off Verona Street, or am I supposed to turn left into Palmer Avenue? And there's nothing here to say, oh, you're supposed to turn left and go up Palmer Avenue. Remember, there's no map back there. There is no map. Now look on the left, it's all grass. There is no footpath there. The footpath finishes back there around where that driveway is. So cyclists coming along that footpath would just end up on the grass if there's kids or whatever. Now we can see here there's pedestrian signage pointing you to go left here. Nothing for cyclists. There's some white signs saying look for cyclists, but there's been a lot of times where I've gone through detours as a cyclist and I've been sent somewhere else than the pedestrians. The other thing, Augusta Street is a much busier street than Palmer Avenue, and I had a car right on my backside coming through here that came speeding up the street. Very uncomfortable place to be riding with kids. There he goes, boom. Kids, families, whatever, should be on the footpath there, not out on this road. This is not a good place for children. We come up along here, there is nothing to say the detour has ended, and at Hedges Avenue you're supposed to get back onto the path. For all we know, the detour might continue on, and we're supposed to stay on this road. Where's the remaining signage saying hop off here? This is the kind of stuff that's just, you would expect to see if this was a diversion for drivers, but there's absolutely nothing, no equivalent here for cyclists. So we've got some, trio of cyclists coming down the road here. Let's just look at the signage as they come down here over on the right. Not a lot of it. Again, there is, there's some now there for pedestrians, but I still didn't see a map at this end for anybody to tell them where to go. And so these guys, kept on going along the road, and then at this intersection they hopped off. So, they got it right. But of course, one thing you do have to be really careful of at this intersection is not getting cleaned up by a car. So yeah, council, I think you really need to go back and have a second look at this plan, and stick in some some better signage, some more comprehensive signage.